But my goal is to make sure that everybody understands this issue with 7 toxicities and why are we going to talk about these 7 toxicities? Because what I'm about to share with you right now, if you can effectively address these issues, there's no way that you can ever have to deal with chronic disease. In other words, chronic disease starts from one certain premise, and that premise is from oxidative stress. And the problem that we have in our society is that we are being constantly bombarded with things that we don't understand, we don't appreciate what they're doing to our bodies. And these 7 things that I'm going to discuss now are the source, the key, the impetus behind oxidative stress that leads to chronic disease. So the first one is heavy metals. And each one of these, as I discuss each one of these heavy metals, as I discuss each of these toxicities, I'm going to try to elaborate on them so that each one, at least you understand where you're getting exposure from and what you can do to prevent getting exposed to and prevent yourself from having to deal with the subsequent chronic disease that may rear its ugly head if these toxicities are not addressed. So the first one is heavy metals. Where do heavy metals come from, and what are heavy metals? Heavy metals are the mercury, the lead, the arsenic, the antimony, nickel, tin, cadmium, uranium, plutonium, all these different types of metals that we're exposed to. Where do they come from? They come in the water that we drink. They come added in the foods that we eat. They're in the air that we're inhaling. For instance, lead in gasoline was a very common problem that we had up until they took the lead out of gasoline back in the 70s. But even still, to this day, there's lead inside of gasoline. And the combustion of fossil fuels, meaning coal-burning plants, for instance, steam plants, that combustion, the fuel that's coming out of the steam that's coming out of these coal-burning plants and the fuels that are being burned that you're inhaling, the vapor is the highest source of mercury that you'll be exposed to. In other words, amalgams that you've got in your mouth, the dental fillings that you have in your mouth, there's actually less exposure to the mercury from the fillings that are outgassing in your mouth than there is from the combustion of fossil fuels that you're breathing in. So I'm just talking about mercury right now. Then you've got lead and you've got all these other types of metals. So you have to be very, very careful. And many of these metals are actually in the vaccines that we've got, that we're taking, that we're giving to our children. And these metals are being used as preservatives to allow the vaccines to last longer, but then we're injecting a poison into our system. So heavy metal toxicity is the #1 source of toxicity in my book. In fact, we have a DVD called Heavy Metal Toxicity, the Hidden Killer. And I believe that heavy metals are the most endemic issue right now in our society as far as toxicity is concerned. So addressing heavy metal toxicity is of vital importance. If you don't address that, cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, arthritis, the references that show the level of chronic disease, these chronic diseases that I mentioned, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, the extent of the evidence that shows the correlation between these heavy metals and these chronic diseases is absolutely mind-boggling. Just to give you an idea, 8 out of 10 people on our planet in the industrialized world, all the developed countries, will die of either heart disease or cancer. 8 out of 10. That means the remaining 2 out of 10 people that die, that means all chronic disease, everything, all of the disease processes besides cancer and heart disease. So every other type of disease you can think of. Trauma, meaning car accidents, diving accidents, whatever the kind of accidents. Natural disasters, like earthquakes, tsunamis, wars, homicide, murders. You take all these causes of death, put them all together, including all of the diseases, they only represent 2 out of 10 people dying. So it's a very minuscule number of people that are dying from all these other things compared to heart disease and cancer. And heart disease and cancer have been clearly correlated with heavy metal toxicity. From the New England Journal of Medicine, from the American Journal of Cardiology, from the Journal of the American Medical Association, these are all very prominent medical journals. So heavy metals is the first one.